Working is the biggest waste of time ever for most young people in this economy. It's literally worse than just doing nothing. Don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking you if you have a job. In fact, quite the opposite. I actually have massive respect for anyone who can tolerate today's insanely awful wages and working conditions. This is why I'm actually so passionate about making these videos, to help get out the word that all this shit going on is just not okay. But yes, you heard that right. I believe nothing is a bigger waste of time for young people today than working a traditional 9 to 5 for these soulless companies these days, and that you should prioritize everything else in your life above working. And I'm about to prove it to you with cold, hard facts. Scientific facts, mathematical facts, and statistical facts. Trigger warning. Boomers and corporate shills are about to be offended because they're a bunch of sensitive snowflakes who can't handle the truth. Let's start with the science. Work-related stress is a killer. This is a scientific fact, not my own personal opinion. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, high cortisol, weakened immune system, and the list goes on. We've all seen the very visible signs of these health killers in any of our friends or family when they start a high-stress job. They seemingly age 10 times faster the minute they start working. One of my favorite old sayings is, "A healthy man has 100 dreams, a sick man only has one." What does this actually mean if you break it down? Well, basically, health is the foundation of absolutely everything in life. Whatever other dreams you might have are only possible to even think about if you're healthy enough in the first place. Whether you want to enjoy your youth, make friends, travel the world, find your purpose and passions in life, none of this is possible if you're not healthy enough to experience it in the first place. For this reason, it is the one resource that's far more important than any other. And yes, certainly a lot more valuable than money. So, trading your health in exchange for money just flat out isn't worth it. Now, this issue is exacerbated tenfold when it comes to young men, because we're always the first ones forced into these physically demanding, unhealthy blue-collar jobs. Think about it. What's a major piece of career advice I'm sure a lot of you have heard at this point? Oh, if the economy sucks and a degree is worthless, just go into trades, bro. Be an electrician or plumber or something. So let's explore this a bit. Again, all cold, hard scientific facts here. No subjective personal opinions. Electricians are at an extremely high risk for asbestos exposure. This can lead to asbestosis, a serious lung disease that happens when a person inhales asbestos fibers. This can lead to a whole host of serious health issues, from breathing problems to lung cancer. Welders have to deal with eye damage and inhaling carcinogens from constantly burning metals. HVAC workers and plumbers are exposed to toxic chemicals. There's no job in the trades that doesn't come with severe health consequences. I mean, there's no job at all that doesn't come with severe consequences, but it's especially bad in the trades. I get a lot of flack for saying that for young men these days. Just staying home and playing video games is better than working. To be clear, I'm not saying it's ideal. Ideal case scenario, which everyone would rather do, is to get rich by either becoming a YouTuber or a crypto investor or some other unconventional path and live your best life. But I'm not going to be so out of touch to think that these options are just readily open and available to everyone. And keep in mind, so far we've only talked about the long-term health issues of working. We haven't even discussed all the freak accidents that can randomly happen on the job any day and severely injure or even kill you. Just a few months ago, a poor 19-year-old girl working at Walmart died in an absolutely horrific workplace accident. And I can promise you, the jackass CEOs and bosses don't give a damn. There are some rare instances of hardcore video game addicts playing for 48 hours straight and dying of dehydration/sleep deprivation. But these are insane 1 in a million cases. So long as you maintain a healthy, balanced lifestyle of getting regular exercise, cooking healthy meals, and getting a good night's sleep, gaming can actually be a very healthy form of leisure. When most jobs these days can literally lead to cancer, severe injury, or death, I don't see why it's even a remotely controversial opinion that just Staying home and playing video games is a better option now. These are all facts and science, so if you're offended by the truth, then I don't know what to tell you. Have we gotten so brainwashed by the system that we literally don't even care about our own health and our own lives anymore? Reason number 2, working won't even improve your financial situation anymore. So, we all know that working comes with trade-offs. Trade-offs of your health, your time, and your happiness. This isn't anything new, we've always known this. But the reason a lot of people still chose to work in the past was because these trade-offs were exactly that, a trade-off of benefits and detriments. You would trade off your time and your health essentially for money, and all the things that money can buy. A house, a car, vacations, a better life, etc. But here's the thing. With the dogshit wages these jackass employers are paying these days, you won't even get any financial benefit from working, which is the main benefit you're supposed to get for the trade-off of working. We've done the math and crunched the numbers in many previous videos, so I'm not going to go too much into detail about it there, but with how expensive rent, gas, and everything else is these days, not only do you not make any money from working, it's literally gotten to a level where job-related expenses cost more than the job itself pays you. Something we've started calling paying to work. Now, for anyone out there who still wants to shame young people into working, please justify to me using actual facts and logic, not your own personal feelings, why anyone should work when they're not even receiving what's supposed to be the main benefit of working. This would be like going on one of those insane fad diets, where all you can do is eat carrots and drink vegetable soup. And you put yourself through all this insanity with the primary benefit of losing weight in mind. And then you end up actually gaining weight instead of losing weight. Find a way to logically justify the benefits of doing this. You can't. You could make an argument that working was worth it back when we had a better economy. You can't make that argument today. Reason number 3, self-worth and dignity. When you present all the logical, scientific, and even financial reasons as to why young people should avoid work at all costs today, the last-ditch weak argument boomers will give to try and shame you into work is,
"Oh, even if you aren't getting paid anything, you should work for your own self-respect and dignity. There's pride in a good, honest day of work."
Once again, let's break this down. I absolutely have the utmost respect for every hardworking person who's trying their best to make it in this economy. The same, however, can't be said for their bosses and employers. Bosses and employers are some of the most toxic and abusive human beings on the planet. It kind of makes sense when you think about it. You kind of have to be a toxic, abusive asshole who steps all over people in order to climb the corporate ladder. It's inherent to the job. Now, on what planet does it help your self-respect and dignity to be chewed out by a narcissistic, toxic, abusive asshole of a boss all day? It actually does the exact opposite. In fact, Gen Z is being criticized as soft because they will stand up to their toxic employers and refuse to put up with this garbage. Again, it's the exact opposite. Standing up for yourself is actually the most courageous and brave thing you can do. Quitting your job will bring you far more self-respect and dignity than working will. If you disagree with this, then I respectfully ask you to consider, what if you were to apply these parameters to any situation outside of work? Let's say you had a child, whether it was a son or a daughter, who was trapped in a toxic and abusive relationship. Would you call them soft for standing up for themselves and refusing to put up with this BS? Wouldn't you be incredibly proud of them for the day they summoned up the courage to leave that abusive relationship? I just don't get the logic that abuse is a bad thing in relationships, but abuse in the workplace is somehow just a normal thing you should put up with. Why? Because we're getting paid $7 an hour? Have we become so brainwashed by the system that we've now decided it's okay to be verbally and psychologically abused for the price of $7 an hour? Another thing that drives me crazy is the whole, "Oh, you should be grateful because you have it better than anyone in human history" narrative. This is actually not even true from a historical, factual standpoint, which I've proven many times before. But even if it were true, what kind of pathetic excuse for abuse is this? Sure, people in the past suffered under brutal working conditions, but the whole point of progress is to improve things. I mean, could you imagine if you had a daughter who was trapped in a verbally abusive relationship and you were to tell her, hey, you're just soft? In the past, some men actually physically beat their wives too. So you should be grateful he's only a verbally abusive asshole. You have it better than anyone in human history. If no one would accept this bullshit in any other context besides work, why the hell should we accept it at our workplace? Just because the guy doing the abuse has a fancy little manager title on his name tag? Conclusion: what should you do instead? We've established now all the reasons why young people are not benefiting from working anymore. But there's still a burning question that remains. What should you do with your life instead? What is the solution? This is obviously going to vary based on your individual circumstances, so I can't give a one-size-fits-all answer. But what I can say is this: do literally anything else. Literally anything you can do to avoid working, do it. The good news for Gen Z is that it's 2024, and in the modern day, there are plenty of ways to make money outside of traditional jobs. Whether it's starting a YouTube channel, entrepreneurship, or starting an online business. If these opportunities are available to you, you should absolutely do them. But I'm aware that it's not possible for everyone, so if that's the case, there's absolutely nothing wrong with just living with your parents till you figure things out either. If you can qualify for welfare, take it and don't feel any shame about it. This economy sucks way too hard to care about any BS principles of bootstraps or whatever. Not to mention, rich people are a million times bigger welfare recipients, and no one cares about that. If you're forced into a situation where you have to work, try to adopt a minimalist lifestyle and save up as much as you can, so that in a few years, you have enough saved up to leave the country. View work as a temporary, necessary evil to save up enough money to quit, and not as a long-term, lifelong solution you're going to be doing for decades. For your physical and mental health, for your self-respect and dignity, and hell, even for your finances at this point, doing literally anything else is better than working these days. Working in 2024 will get you nothing. And in fact, the more you work, the more you just go into debt these days. This is something I call the Gen Z work-for-nothing paradox. Check out this video right here to learn more.
Option 1, work and be poor. Option 2, don't work and be poor. And people wonder why nobody wants to work anymore.
Why work for nothing at all, just to spend the whole day doing nothing with basic food and water? LOL.
These are real quotes from young people describing their frustration with what I call the work-for-nothing paradox. This can be visualized in an underground parking basement space, where every time you advance a level, you actually go down a floor instead of going up. Let's start our journey at floor 0, where you're a young person today who maybe just graduated high school and is now just getting started in life. You're feeling a bit lost and confused as you're not quite sure what you want to do in life. You briefly consider going to college but quickly drop that idea when you realize how expensive it is. Not to mention you hear that a degree is becoming less and less useful these days. So you apply for a few jobs in your local area, only to quickly find out how bad the job market is and how no one is really hiring right now, despite what they say. Faced with no other choices, you accept your fate and just continue living with your parents and playing video games. In the past, this was ground zero in life, and it still is. However, as you will soon see, in this economy and this world we currently live in, ground zero is actually the best place to be in, not the worst. You see, on ground zero, you have no income, but at least have no living expenses either. What happens when you advance a level in the underground basement of the modern world we live in? Let's find out. So, now we're on level 1, or -1, to be more accurate. This is where, for whatever reason, you've decided to take the first step into adulthood and get your first minimum wage job. Perhaps your parents were pressuring you nonstop and you couldn't take it anymore. Perhaps you just got tired of sitting around doing nothing all day. Hey, good for you. You're just doing what everyone else is telling you to do. Problem is, their advice is outdated trash. Once you get your first entry-level job for $10, $12, $15 an hour or whatever, you'll quickly realize that in order to get a job in the first place, you have to have your own car. Every job pretty much requires this, and these things aren't cheap. A reliable new car will set you back at least $10,000, which is about 6 months of your wages gone before you've even started working. Of course, you could just opt for a used car for much cheaper, which I'm sure some people in the comments will point out. But if you go this route, the problem is, those things can break down at any moment, and eventually the maintenance costs will add up to the cost of a new car anyways. We haven't even gotten to other transportation costs of gas and insurance yet, which will set you back even further. Oh, and now that you've gotten a job, your delusional boomer parents who think it's still 1960 expect you to move out and get your own place. Because in their minds, rent is still $50 a month. You can barely afford car payments, let alone car payments, and modern-day $2,000 a month rent. So now you're working 40 hours a week in a job you hate, and not only do you not get any reward for it, your life is objectively worse than when you weren't working at all. But remember, the fun is just beginning as we're only at level 1 right now. Let's see what happens when we descend to level 2. My frustration with young people is that they think success is supposed to happen just like that.
You just need to work harder. Your skills don't deserve a living wage yet. My first job, I was only making $7 an hour too.
After constantly having to hear all this BS gaslighting from your asshole boomer parents, you decide to take their advice and just work harder to see what happens. For the next 6 months, you really go above and beyond at your job. You show up early, work as hard as you can, and really go the extra mile even though you're being paid the same dogshit wage. In most cases, this won't even get you anywhere. But let's assume, for the sake of argument, you're one of the lucky few who gets noticed and gets a promotion. Let's say you work really hard and get promoted to manager, and now you're making $25 an hour instead of $15. Congratulations. Your hard work has finally paid off, right? Not so fast. You see, you've not only been promoted in your workplace, you've also been promoted in your income tax bracket. And you've moved up from the 12% tax bracket to the 22% tax bracket. Oh, and this is just federal income tax, by the way. We still haven't even talked about state income tax, sales tax, or social security tax yet. Oh, and now that you're manager, you definitely can't live with your parents anymore. You can't even live in a cheap apartment in the suburbs anymore. You have to be at work at a reliable time every single day. So this means that you have to rent smack dab in the city center, where rent is the most expensive. So once again, you put in the time, you work harder, you do what you're told. And not only do you not get rewarded for it, your life is objectively worse than it was before. Once again, your taxes and living expenses rise way faster than the puny extra few bucks you make per hour. But don't worry, there's still a few more levels to go. Level 3, it's never too late to go back to school. After working for a year or two in your new manager position, you find yourself getting increasingly disillusioned as, no matter how much you work, you can't seem to save up anything at all. You start suspecting that everything you've been told your entire life is bullshit, but you're not quite sure what to do about it. This is when your boomer parents give you the brilliant idea of, hey, it's not too late to go back to school. You think about it for a while and you ultimately decide it's the only way forward. You're at a dead end with your current job and you keep getting told you just need to acquire a skill. So let's see what happens when you do that. Now, if you're living in Europe, going to a college and getting a degree is arguably worth it. In a lot of places, college is either free or very affordable. You can reliably put in the time to study hard and position yourself to have better career prospects when you graduate. But if you're from America, you're just once again going to work harder to go down another level. We all know how insanely deep into debt you have to go into just to get a degree that doesn't even guarantee you'll get a job. But let's say you're one of the lucky ones that does get a better job as a result of your degree. You'll likely find yourself in a situation like this.
Saving that much money was no walk in the park. But I was lucky to have the support of my mother, who worked tirelessly to help pay for all 4 years of my private college tuition, which was roughly $35,000 a year.
According to official sources, it takes on average 20 years to fully pay back student loan debt. I suspect it will get much worse. But let's just accept this figure at face value for now. This means that you study hard for 4 years to acquire a skill, only to be set back 20 years in debt. We're not even talking 1 step forward, 2 steps back anymore. This is literally 1 step forward, 5 steps back at this point. This may seem like a fun and silly exaggeration on a Gen Z YouTube channel right now, but remember, this is the real-life frustration that so many young people are facing today, and why so many Gen Z and millennials are giving up on the system and realizing how bullshit it is. Level 4. Now it's time to descend to the final and very bottom level of the work laziness paradox. Before we explore the absolute depths of despair here, let's take a quick moment to appreciate how far we've come thus far. We started out as a young guy, doing nothing all day, just staying home playing video games. Our income was 0, but so were our living expenses. We decided to take society's advice and work hard, and all that did was force us into more debt, as our work-related expenses cost more than the dog-shit wages our company was willing to pay. We worked even harder to get a promotion, and we ended up losing even more money in the end, as we had to pay higher taxes, and our job-related expenses went up even more. So we once again took society's advice and went back to school to acquire a skill. And now we're not only stuck at 0 in the short term, we've built up 20 years of negative long-term debt as well. You can see the pattern by now. The more and harder you work, the worse off you become. You look back at your starting point of being a young guy, doing nothing and living with your parents, and you realize with your current $50,000 student loan debt, you'd give anything just to go back there. Even going back to 0 is a dream come true at this point. For our final level of -4, we're going to once again take society's advice to the next level. You see, in level 3, we did what they said, which was go out and acquire a skill. But when their advice doesn't work and actually backfires, they'll of course never just admit they were wrong and double down on their gaslighting. Well, you got a useless business degree? Of course you're not going to get a job with that. You need to study something serious, like being a doctor or a lawyer. This is the next step in progression, which I'm sure you've all heard by now as well, so let's see what happens if you follow this advice. It takes about 7 years to become a lawyer, and another 10 to become a doctor. The average student loan debt for a lawyer is about $130,000, and for a doctor, it's a staggering $234,000. This means you are now setting yourself back 6 figures before you've even earned a single dollar. For comparison, I had a friend who simply invested in foreign real estate property back in 2018 for $90,000. And because he researched it well, the property today is worth over double that. And because he's a single guy with minimal living expenses, he's essentially already set for life. His boomer parents were incredibly unsupportive of his decision and were pressuring him to be a doctor or a lawyer per usual. And he would have been absolutely miserable had he done that. They called him lazy for, quote-unquote, taking the easy way out, but I promise you he's not losing any sleep over it. This is the perfect example of how thinking outside the box beats traditional hard work every time in the modern world. But beyond just the massive debt you're incurring, there's something else you're losing that's even more valuable than that. And that is your youth and your time. These 7 to 10 years of your life are lost forever. 7 to 10 years where you could have been traveling, finding your purpose, making new friends and memories. This is your 20s, the best time in your life, gone and dusted just to feed a soulless system that doesn't care about you. Now, the good news is, if you do manage to finish law school or medical school, you're pretty much guaranteed a job when you come out. But the staggering amounts of debt at this point is something you might just have to spend the rest of your life paying back. This is what young people have seen and are just so disillusioned with these days. It's not just that you're working for nothing, it's even worse than that. As you've just seen, the more you work, the further you go in debt, and the worse off you become. And in the meantime, you lose your youth, your time, any semblance of happiness or enjoyment in life. So, if you're looking for a way out, a solution to escape this miserable reality, I got good news for you. I've put together a comprehensive tier list video on all the ways you can successfully check out of society and say F you to the system. These guys successfully checked out of society, and today they tell us how they did it. Story 1. I said fuck it, quit a 6-figure job, sold my home, vehicles, and every single thing I owned that didn't fit in 3 duffel bags, and moved to a small town in northern France, and immersed myself in the language and did odd jobs. I then met a German woman, and we dated for a year, then got married. And I moved across the border to Germany, where I bought a house for a price I'd never see in Canada, and got a job as a mailman, where I work part-time till 1 p.m. And the rest of the day, I do a little trading or selling things online and exercising. Life is good, I'm healthy, relaxed, in the best shape of my life at 49. I have my dogs and my wife, and can drive to at least 6 countries in any given day to hang out and visit places tourists normally never see, ever. Story 2. I got really sick of my job, so I moved to the country to eat a lot of peaches. Just kidding. I moved abroad and started teaching English. I planned on just doing it 2-3 years, but I liked it so much, I got my MA in teaching English, and now I'm in my 13th year. I got a job in a university, so I don't have to deal with the BS of teaching children or kissing mom's butts in a high-income country, nor do I have to deal with the pay for peanuts in a low-income country. Instead, I come in and do my 15 teaching and go home. I'm not high-income by any means, but without a wife or kids, my pay is 100% mine, and enough to live comfortably with my massive amounts of free time. I really only work 36-40 weeks a year, and probably do a total of 20 hours a week of work on average. My mental health has never been better, and with the time to go to the gym and cook all my own meals, at 42, I'm stronger than I've ever been. Story 3. I moved to Asia and work from a laptop by the beach for the most part. Kinda disillusioned with the way the West is going and waiting to see who rises up to provide a good alternative. Though I feel like this might be the calm before the storm somewhat. Story 4. I live in the countryside and I find that eases my mind a lot. Going home to a quiet place and taking a walk without seeing a single person is just peaceful. Also, generally the people you do see are polite and say hi, even stop and have a very quick chat. I stop by the field just down the road to sometimes pet the horses. It's just pleasant. Story 5. Had an opportunity to move to a cheap cabin on 30 undeveloped acres, co-renting the land with an acquaintance. Built a bear-proof 1600 SQ foot garden. It is nice being away from the city, but with a few small towns close by, and a metro within reasonable travel distance. But thinking that there is going to be a transcendence, and you will escape whatever demons you are running from just because you are surrounded by nature, is pure hopium. I can travel into the metro to help chill with my family, or go to work after I do a stretch of faux homesteading, lumberjacking, slowly building up garden, brewing, grilling. In that regard, it's a better balance than being urban, but the downside is less social opportunities in that area. Story 6. I'm just a delivery driver now. I go outside for either food or to make money, that's it. The rest of my time is me time, anime, horror movies, video games, working out, etc. Now that I basically semi-work for myself, I'm much happier. Money is tighter in some respects, but since I can cash out after every day, if I want something, food, money for streaming services, ECT, I just go out for a few hours and come home afterwards. Not having annoying coworkers, bad bosses, and doing my own hours makes up for all the shortcomings. I don't take work home with me. Once I'm done with my shift, I truly don't think about it, unlike every other job I've had. Story 7. I work a minimum wage job, 9 to 5. I pretty much just show up, do what I'm paid to do, and spend the rest of my time seeing friends or doing hobbies. Getting a house in England is practically a long-distance dream. I've never had that desire. I might get to a point where I can rent a nice, simple apartment, and that's it. Or me and a mate might just get married, so we can both have ownership of a house together. Either way, fuck it. Can't be bothered with romance nor busting my ass off in a society that doesn't give one toss about you. I'd much rather be playing board games or Warhammer. I still go to work, I just do my own thing outside of work. Realize the majority of what men do outside of work is to attract women in some way, shape, or form. And as soon as I stopped dating, most of societal pressures just sort of disappeared. Don't have to look a certain way, can drive what car I want, live where I want. Don't have to worry about anyone else wanting kids, or accidentally getting someone pregnant. Don't have to earn enough to win anyone over. I don't even have to talk to anyone outside of work. The sunset. It's beautiful, isn't it? Recently, I had a falling out with a longtime business partner. Not my boss or anything like that, just some guy I did a few freelance gigs with. This guy is a boomer with a typical boomer mindset, and he left me with this scathing personal attack. I've always encouraged you to get married, start your family, create a career path, but you just laughed. Now you're a middle-aged man, no wife, no children, no career path. Now I'm past the point in my life where these kinds of personal attacks really affect me. I kind of just brushed it off and moved on with my day. But then when I thought about it, I realized I really actually made the right choices. A lot of my friends who I grew up with did go the traditional path. When I look at them today, I really don't envy them. Most of them are struggling to get by, even the ones who have high-level white-collar jobs. Things have just gotten so expensive to where 6 figures isn't even that much anymore. And this is especially true if you have student loan debts to pay off, children to raise, a mortgage. Even renting is absurdly expensive these days. Oh, and this is the absolute best case scenario. For anyone who's trying to raise a family off a normal blue-collar job, I don't even see how that's possible these days. It's not just about the money either. The negative health effects of all that stress build up over time, and everyone I know who went the traditional path looks 10 years older than they are. Beaten, miserable, and out of shape. I don't know, man. It's just not worth it. But there's an even bigger epiphany I had from all this. One that actually got rid of all my anxiety when I understood it. It's no secret that young people now are feeling more stressed and anxious than ever. Of course, a lot of it is due to the economy and modern dating market. But I think the ultimate root of all this is the expectation to follow society's timeline. The pressure from older generations to have a career at 25, to be married, and have kids by 30. Just such archaic, outdated mentalities that are simply not for everyone. And then you feel anxious, or like you're behind in life if you don't live up to those outdated mentalities. But think about it this way. If you just lived on an island like this one, outside of society and all its pressures, would you really care if you didn't have a job at 25, or if you weren't married at 30? You wouldn't even know or care what your age was. So live life on your own timeline and do things when you're ready. Not when society or your parents want you to. A lot of anxiety is purely caused by the pressure of living up to societal expectations. So if you can detach yourself from this, I guarantee a lot of your anxiety is going to go away. I really think society, and specifically societal expectations, are the root cause of almost all mental health issues. Okay, maybe not 100%, but certainly 90% or higher. Us young men are under exceptional amounts of pressure from society. We're under pressure to make a lot of money, to get a good job, to have a girlfriend or get married. None of these things are inherently bad. But the problem is, in the modern world, it's just too unreasonably tedious to live up to these expectations. So here's the thing. When expectations are put on you, expectations you didn't ask or sign up for. And then on top of that, shitty economic conditions that society itself caused makes it damn near impossible to live up to society's own expectations. Naturally, you get depressed, anxious, and hopeless when you don't live up to those expectations. But let me ask you this. Who gave society the right to throw these expectations onto you? You didn't ask to be born, and you didn't ask for these responsibilities. Let's say my PS5 randomly breaks down and stops working. I can pay a technician $50, $100, or whatever to fix it. If he doesn't successfully fix it, I have a right to be mad at him because he signed up for the job and didn't do it. What I can't do, however, is just go to any random person on the street, offer to pay him money to fix my PS5, then get angry if he doesn't want to do it. He never asked or signed up for the job. But this is essentially what society does to us as young men. We never asked for the responsibility of making money or having a good career. Why do they automatically get to assign us these terms of conditions from birth without our consent? If you are a productive guy who enjoys working and making money, you should absolutely be allowed and encouraged to do that. But if you don't want to do these things, you shouldn't be shamed and forced into it either. Once I unplugged from the matrix and realized this, all my depression and anxiety went away. So what if I'm 30 and don't want to work? So what if I'm still playing video games? So what if I don't live up to society's expectations? Society never had the right to put those expectations on me anyways. The first step was realizing this, and that cleared most of the negative emotions in my head. And once I was able to do that, it cleared my mind to allow more positive energy to flow. I was once again able to socialize without fear of being judged. Even if someone wanted to judge me, I could finally stand my ground. I was able to do things that I personally enjoyed, like video games and sports. How many of us are forced to give up our own personal enjoyment for the sake of women or society? We're always told to stop playing video games and give up all our own favorite hobbies to quote-unquote grow up. And it's like, when you're expected to sacrifice everything you actually enjoy so that you can dedicate 8 hours a day to a job you hate, is it any wonder why that would cause depression and anxiety? Even if you want to take a more conventional path and start a career and family, you should do it on your own timeline. Doing it based on societal expectation not only sparks anxiety, but pushes you into making the wrong choice, as you rush into it and make a rash decision before you're ready. I can't count how many friends I've seen stuck in bad marriages because they felt pressure to get married before 30 or whatever, and so they just got married to the nearest convenient person when they were 29 instead of someone who actually makes them happy. The other reason society is the main cause of just about every mental health issue today is because it makes us unable to appreciate the little things, the little achievements that would otherwise make us happy in life. Let's say you're really out of shape, but you start hitting the gym and you get to a point where you can do one pull-up. This is absolutely a great sign of progress that you should and naturally would be happy about. This is definitely a reason to celebrate. But because it's not going to make any money or impress any girl, because society doesn't care, you unknowingly don't give yourself permission to be happy until you've gotten society's approval, which, by the way, is harder and harder to do these days. But it really shouldn't be this way. In fact, the only way you get to the Giga Chad level society wants you to be is by celebrating and appreciating the small wins on the way. You can't just directly skip from being completely out of shape to being able to do 100 pull-ups. You have to start with 1, then 5, then 10, and so forth. It's almost like an invisible force looking over your shoulder and not letting you enjoy anything in life until it gives you its approval. I say fuck that. Go out and enjoy any W in life, big or small. Whether it's something as big as making $1 million or something as small as finally beating that final boss in the video game you were stuck on. Give yourself permission to enjoy things regardless of whether society approves of it or not. Remember, if the world doesn't owe you anything, you don't owe the world anything either. Just like you are not entitled to a yacht if you can't afford it, society isn't entitled to your contribution if it doesn't give you enough incentive to contribute in the first place. Find what makes you happy. Improve yourself, but celebrate your own milestones, whether that impresses society or not, and live life on your own terms. You do that, and most likely you will see your mental health improve tremendously. We live in a materialistic, consumerist society. Whether we like it or not, society views pretty much our entire worth as a human being based on how much money we make and what we do for a living. Think about it. Whenever you meet a new person, what's always one of the first questions you ask each other? So, what do you do? And if you're one of many people who either can't find work or are struggling with a not-so-glamorous job in this economy, you've undoubtedly felt an uncomfortable pang of shame as you uncomfortably try to answer this question. Society views you as nothing more than your job and how much you can contribute to its GDP. But what if it doesn't have to be that way? There's a profound quote that's really caught fire in Gen Z communities recently. I see it on my own channel all the time. The game is rigged and the only way to win is to not play. This perfectly sums up the state of the economy right now and explains why a lot of young people are just checking out and giving up on work. This is a fantastic start of a mindset shift from centuries of consumerist brainwashing. But what if we could take it a step further? What if you could not only escape the rigged game? What if you could change the game itself? This is the hidden power of unemployment that I see in a lot of Gen Z today. 2011, Los Angeles. 13 years ago, I was a young man in my early 20s, the same age a lot of you watching this video are right now. There was a guy who I assumed to be around my age, who I frequently played basketball with at my local gym. Eventually, we became friends, and I was shocked to learn that he wasn't even close to my age at all. He was actually 37. But not only did he look over a full decade younger, he was still incredibly athletic, energetic, and relentless on the basketball court. One day after shooting hoops, he invited me over to his place, which turned out to be a tiny rundown studio in the ghetto. Out of curiosity, I asked him how much rent cost, to which he responded he didn't know because he wasn't even paying for it. It turns out this guy had become eligible for Section 8 housing after living in homeless shelters just about his entire adult life. He never had a 9-to-5, did occasional odd jobs here and there to get by, and lived off free food drives from local churches, which we'll get into more later. I was never a judgmental person about this stuff, and I had begun to question the system myself at that point too. We went on to have a long conversation about it, and he basically told me that his secret to staying so young and healthy was that he simply didn't stress himself out working like everyone did. Now, some of you watching might say this is cope, but I actually think you might be the one coping if you think this. Everything this guy said was a fact, whether you like it or not. I hadn't seen anyone else his age that young and healthy. And it is a scientifically proven fact that work-related stress is horrible for your health. Back in 2011, it was a very different time. This was long before Gen Z came of age, and all these anti-work sentiments gained traction. We were kind of alone in thinking that way at the time, but seeing an entire younger generation wake up and rebel against this toxic system has given me an unprecedented amount of hope in you. Part 2. The elephant in the room. First of all, let's address the major elephant in the room here. Of course, we would all love to just not work and do whatever we want all day. But how do you survive without a job? You have to feed yourself. You have bills to pay. Believe it or not, it's actually very possible to survive and live a somewhat serviceable lifestyle without a traditional job. And no, I'm not talking about getting lucky as an influencer or hitting the jackpot with the crypto markets. Everyone already knows about those. You don't need my help or advice if you want to pursue that. I'm not even talking about making money in general, as that's dependent on all sorts of factors outside of your control, such as the economy. I'm talking about ways to reduce your living expenses to just a few $100s a month, or even close to zero. Literally anyone can do this, because it's about saving money, not making money. Let's start with the most obvious question. How do you feed yourself without a job? For the purposes of this video, I'm going to exclude obvious options such as welfare or living with your parents. Believe it or not, even in this economy with this absurd inflation, you can cut your food budget to $100 a month or less with a few clever strategies. I know this because I've done it myself. There are creative, cheap recipes you can look up all over the internet that allow you to eat reasonably well for extremely cheap. For example, you can buy oatmeal in bulk and pair it with peanut butter and bananas for a breakfast that will fill you up for less than $1 per meal. You can combine this with another insane cheat code I discovered myself in my own journey: food banks. Just about every local community has organizations, usually churches, who give away food on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. This is food that would otherwise be thrown out anyways. So there's nothing morally wrong with taking it for those of you who have moral qualms about welfare for whatever reason. In fact, it would be more immoral to just let it go to waste. You can get quite a plentiful load of decent quality food at these places. It was more than enough to feed me when I was doing this, and I'm a pretty active guy who plays a lot of sports and burns a lot of calories. Is it more important to pretend you're rich to impress people who don't care about you? Or is it more important to get out of your soulless 9-to-5? If you want to stretch this even further, you can implement another cheat code that's gotten popular lately, known as OMAD, or 1 meal a day. Alternative doctors have popularized this in recent years, as there's some evidence to suggest that it's healthier for us to eat just once a day anyways. I'm not going to get into all the science and biology of it in this video. but I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. If you were to combine all three, or even just two of these three strategies, which anyone can do, you could get your food expenses down to essentially zero. To be safe, let's say $100, as you'll probably want to occasionally eat something of your own choosing too. Next, let's talk about shelter. How do you get a roof over your head if you don't have a job? Once again, we're not going to count living with your parents, as you already know about that by now. There are plenty of volunteering opportunities where you can exchange 20 hours per week of chill, unpaid work for free accommodation, and, in some instances, even food. Not being paid isn't ideal, but let's be honest, it's better than working 2 or 3 times as much, and your rent costing more than your paycheck anyways. The website I used to find all my volunteering gigs was Workaway. I'll post the link in the description, and don't worry. No, I'm not running any affiliate links on it. You can find plenty of gigs both at home and abroad. Personally, I'd recommend going abroad if you can, as I think travel is a great experience for young people. But I get that not everyone can leave the country, so there's plenty of volunteer gigs at home too. You can also be a house sitter, or if you have 2 or 3 good friends in the same boat as you, co-op together and split the rent on an apartment. In case you're wondering, yes, I did all this myself to avoid a 9-to-5, which is how I know about it. Now, once you've successfully implemented these cheat codes, you can really get your living expenses down to insanely cheap levels. Theoretically, you could even get it down to zero, though that's probably a little too extreme, as you'll likely want to buy something from the store from time to time. So let's say realistically you get your expenses down to the range of between $200 to $500 per month. This is a pretty realistic target that I think most people could achieve. Now at this point, it's just about finding some online side hustle that will net you this couple $100s per month. Online side hustles sort of have a bad reputation right now because it's really hard to make a full-time living off them. But making a few hundred per month from it is absolutely feasible. A few examples of things you can do are captions, stock photos, and tutoring. These all require little to no experience and are relatively easy gigs to pick up. Certainly a lot easier than getting a job. Once you get the hang of it, you can actually make $1,000 a month or more, which will actually allow you to save money with your new minimalist living expenses. There's so many options when it comes to surviving without a job that the strategies I shared with you here are just the tip of the iceberg. At some point, I'll make a full-on video guide about this if you guys are interested. Let me know in the comments. I've been getting a lot of questions on these videos recently regarding, but how do you survive without a job? This is a fair question, and I didn't really do a great job clarifying it before. So hopefully this answers your question. Part 3. The hidden powers of unemployment. Okay, so here comes the fun part. Now that you know how to survive without a job, let's talk about all the insane cheat codes that unlock when you become unemployed. Time and freedom. Once you disconnect yourself from the need to have a job, only then do you discover true freedom. Don't get me wrong, living off food banks and volunteering is far from the end goal. But it's a great temporary solution that gives you unprecedented levels of freedom. We all agree that time is more valuable than money because money can come and go, while time is a one-way resource. Once the day passes, you can never get it back again. When I first disconnected myself from needing a job using the strategies I just shared with you, I was still in a very rough spot, having to pinch every penny I could save. But the extra 10 hours of freedom I got per day was way more than worth it. And yes, 10 hours because, let's face it, a 9-to-5 is really like an 8-to-6 when you factor in commute time and everything else. Once you have all this extra time on your hands, this is what will really allow you to build something for yourself and your future. What do you want to do in life? Do you want to travel? Do you want to paint amazing pieces of art? Do you want to start a YouTube channel, but never had time when you were working a traditional 9-to-5? You now have more freedom to do all these things than even someone making $100,000 a year. The thing is, when I was doing all this stuff some 10, 15 years ago, no one my generation, or any generation for that matter, really understood my choices, and it was a constant uphill battle arguing with people about all this. I could see everything wrong with the traditional path. You work, but never make enough to save anything. No matter how hard you work, all you do is make someone else rich. But you're never building anything for yourself. But this is what gives me hope in Gen Z. You guys already see through this scam. You guys are already questioning the system and challenging these toxic cultural norms that have enslaved us for centuries. Most of you already don't want to work, and I guess you just wanted a little more direction as to how you could actually pull that off. So hopefully this advice helps. Part 4. Someone has to work to keep things running. Now, another frequent response I get from my videos is, but someone has to work to keep society running. This might not be true for too much longer with AI on the horizon, but let's stick to the current year for now. The thing is, these comments have it all backwards. These philosophies I'm sharing with you aren't meant to demean those working at normal jobs at all. In fact, quite the opposite. These philosophies will actually help them more than anything. One of my biggest beefs with this stupid materialist world we live in is that our society is constantly looking down on and demeaning millions of people who are doing important work necessary to uphold the very society that looks down on them. Fast food workers, janitors, grocery store workers, and the like. In my opinion, they're also criminally underpaid. But why? If we look at the numbers, we see their productivity far exceeds their wages, meaning their bosses and CEOs are stealing from them. And they're able to do this because the average worker constantly has the threat of homelessness looming over their shoulder if they quit or get fired from their jobs. They have all the leverage, while the average person has none. But if enough people watch this video, learn how to quit their jobs, and survive without working, this would all change, and everyone working these necessary jobs would have the leverage to negotiate for far better wages, because they would no longer be so replaceable. Even on an individual level, it could be tremendously empowering. Let's say you watch this video, and you're not someone who wants to quit their job. If you learn these strategies, however, you can finally stand up to your toxic boss and negotiate for better wages and working conditions. This all becomes possible once you remove the threat of homelessness and starvation as a tool of leverage from your employers. So, as you can see, it's a win-win for everyone. Those who don't want to work won't have to, and those who do still want to work will be paid much better wages. We all know that working hard won't get you anywhere in today's world and today's economy. These modern employers and corporations pay such dog-shit wages that no matter how hard you work, you can never save up or build anything for yourself. In fact, the harder you work, the more your work-related expenses such as car payments, gas, certifications, and degrees pile up. This results in what I call the work-for-nothing paradox, where the harder you work, the worse off you become. By the way, this ended up being my second most popular video of all time, so clearly a lot of you have also experienced the same frustrations with working and heavily resonated with this message. This did, however, lead me to wonder if the opposite is also true. If working hard gets you absolutely nothing these days, would this also mean that working less would help you achieve more? Well, possibly. Very possibly. Working less and eventually getting to a point where you don't have to work at all can absolutely help you achieve more. But there's a major caveat to this. You have to manage all of your resources wisely. Delusional boomers who still think hard work pays off are stuck in this mindset because they have a very narrow-minded and myopic view of reality. They view money as the only resource in this life and this world, and as a result, they're willing to sacrifice anything for more money. This includes far more valuable resources such as your time, your health, and your energy. We can visualize this as putting skill points into an RPG character. Let's say you have 10 points to allocate into 4 different resources: money, time, health, and energy. Society wants to push you into literally allocating all 10 points into the money attribute. This is why they're constantly trying to pressure and shame you into working. This is obviously already super fucked up from a moral standpoint because, as human beings, we're worth more than just our jobs and how much money we can pump into the GDP. But even from a practical standpoint, it's completely counterproductive. Allocating all your attribute points into one resource doesn't even help you with that resource itself in the long term. If you've ever played an RPG, you know exactly what I mean. For example, if you completely max out your attack damage at the expense of everything else, you can't even ever get in position to utilize your superior attack damage. You don't have any mobility to get in range in the first place. And even if you somehow do, you just die in one hit before you can ever even get an attack off. This is exactly what happens when you put all your attributes into trying to make money. Not only do you sacrifice all your time, health, and energy, you end up not even making that much money itself. You spend all your time working for an hourly wage that doesn't even pay for the costs of the job itself. You never have any time to start your own business, pursue your own dreams, or learn your own side hustle. Your mental and physical health decline as you suffer from the many symptoms of work-related stress. And just like how you die in one hit when you only max out your attack, you lose all your money in one hit when you inevitably run into a major health issue from overworking yourself. So, obviously, this isn't the way to go, despite what society tells you. But what's the alternative? So let's say you're a young guy, living with your parents who can't find a job, and is being relentlessly criticized for being lazy. You're not really doing much right now, but this can actually be used to your advantage if you know how to manage your other resources wisely. As the title of the video goes, this is how you can achieve more by not working. The general idea here is that, unlike when you're trapped in a 9-to-5 and you're forced to allocate all your attribute points into money, you now have the flexibility to maximize all your other attributes. For example, you now have the time to go for a jog and do a quick workout every morning to enhance your health and energy. Instead of being stuck working in a commercial area where lunch breaks at restaurants are bound to be expensive, you can learn to cook some of the cheap, delicious dollar meals I talked about in previous videos and save a ton of money this way. Congratulations! You've now successfully leveled up in every attribute across the board. Getting your health and energy levels on point is so crucial, and it's something you'll never have time for if you work a 9-to-5. But eventually, you will have to level up your money attribute as well. A lot of you either cannot or don't want to just live with your parents forever. Thankfully, because you're healthy, energetic, and you have a lot of time on your hands, you have a lot more options now when it comes to building an actual meaningful income. Now, don't worry, I'm not about to tell you about get-rich-quick schemes like crypto or trying to sell you a course. I'm not going to tell you to just be a YouTuber or influencer, because everyone already knows about that and you don't need my advice if that's what you want to pursue. There are a lot of simple online side hustles you can do these days to start building some sustainable savings. For example, you can do freelance work, typing in captions for videos on rev.com. If you're a native or even just a fluent English speaker, there's a ton of apps where you can apply to be a tutor and make from $10 to $30 an hour. I actually personally did this to fund my own travels and job-free existence. In fact, I just learned today that you can make a decent amount by just playing old-school RuneScape, leveling up your character, farming for gold, and selling it to third-party vendors. These are all things that, unlike working a normal job, there's no barrier to entry, no initial overhead costs, and no crippling time constraints. None of these are insane, unrealistic promises of get-rich-quick schemes. They're all practical things that pretty much anyone can do. So, as you can see, when you work less, you actually even end up better off financially than if you were to work. Which is ironic because the main point of working is to make money. Now, wait a second. Did you just say these online side hustles can make you more money than working a normal 9-to-5? Absolutely. You just have to look at it from a more nuanced perspective. You see, with these online side hustles, it's very possible and realistic to get to a point where you're making around $1,000 a month. Now, when you compare this to, let's say, a $12 an hour job where you'd get around $2,000 a month, it seems on the surface level that the 9-to-5 is superior as it pays twice as much. But if you've ever worked a 9-to-5, especially in America, you know that this is far from the full story. You see, having a job in and of itself isn't free. In fact, at this point and with this inflation, job-related expenses almost cost more than the job itself pays you. This is a term we've started to call paying to work here on this channel. When you have to work, you have to pay for a car and gas to get to work. You have to pay for a more expensive apartment in the city center. You have to pay for work uniforms and expensive lunches near your workplace. Companies absolutely should pay for all these things as their work-related expenses. But as we all know, they're way too big of a jackass too. Now, on the other hand, if you just do these low-effort online side hustles, there pretty much aren't really any job-related expenses other than maybe $50 for internet and a one-time $500 or so purchase of a decent computer, which most of you probably already have anyways. This means that pretty much every dollar you make can be saved to build something for your future. Whether you want to invest or start your own business, you now have some actual savings to work with. So, as you can see once again, by working less, you actually achieve more. Not only do you greatly improve every aspect of your life outside of money, you even improve your financial situation itself, which is supposed to be the main benefit of working. Now, to take this even a step further, the other insane cheat code that happens when you stop working is that you unlock the ability to separate your work from your physical location. I first noticed this when I was doing my English tutoring gig online. On paper, the $10 per hour I made teaching English online was the exact same $10 per hour that I made as a waiter for my first job out of high school. But in reality, it wasn't even close to the same, because the online tutoring gig allowed me to work from a cheap hostel in Eastern Europe, while the $10 per hour waiter job forced me to stay in America, paying absurd American rent, car, and gas prices. You know how corporations screwed us over with globalization and hiring cheap illegal migrant labor to replace us? Think of this as just playing the opposite side of the globalization coin and using it to your advantage instead. As you see once again, you achieve more by working less. Now, so far, we've only talked about the short-term, immediate benefits of not working. But when it comes to the long-term future outlook, the effects become even more pronounced. A common criticism I receive to this type of advice is, well, it may work for the short term, but it's not a long-term solution. You can't just teach English online and volunteer in hostels forever. First of all, there's no long-term future when it comes to being a wage slave either. We've all by now seen through the lies of the American dream illusion they've tried to sell us since grade school. Trying to climb the corporate ladder or accumulate a lot of debt through college is just a scam and a complete waste of time at this point. Your wages won't even keep up with inflation, let alone be enough for you to build any savings, short-term or long-term. But when you refuse to work and just go your own way, even if the online side hustle gigs aren't an insane amount of money, what they do buy you is a ton of valuable time and mental space that you would never get with a job. This extra time and mental space can be used to research investments and start your own online business or YouTube channel. Now I realize a lot of you might be tempted to roll your eyes as soon as I say those words, but hear me out for a second. The reason things like being a crypto investor or YouTube influencer has gotten a bad rap recently is because scam artists promote it to you as a short-term, get-rich-quick scheme. And yes, you're right to be skeptical of that, as anything promising you guaranteed immediate success is likely too good to be true. But when it comes to building long-term wealth over the course of years or decades, it's a different story. Clearly, successful investments and YouTube channels do exist. It's just, it normally takes many years to actually build them up. But this is where refusing to work once again benefits you. You will not only have more time to research the best investments and business strategies, you'll have more time to actually enjoy them once you do finally figure it out. For me personally, I invested in about 25 failed altcoins and failed at YouTube for 15 years before I finally hit gold with Bitcoin and Tesla. And this channel finally picked up a bit of success. But once again, I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record here. I was only able to do all this because of valuing time more than money and refusing to work a 9-to-5. You've probably tried your hand at a few of these, but got discouraged after the normal initial failure. But if you keep trying for 10 to 15 years, eventually one of your investments, one of your YouTube channels or online businesses, one of these golden tickets to financial freedom is bound to come through. And here's the best part. Once you finally connect on one of these, you will actually get to enjoy life in your youth instead of retiring when you're too old to enjoy the money anyways. And even that is being generous considering this society and economy is so screwed that our generation will be unlikely to see Social Security or retirement anyways. Conclusion. Now, of course, all of this is just a blueprint for how you can and will accomplish more by avoiding a 9-to-5 at all costs. But don't take this as me telling you what to do or how to live. It's ultimately your life and your decision to make. And if you want to just work a stable 9-to-5, there's nothing wrong with that either. Just know what you're getting into. A common response I get to these videos is that if everyone just checks out of society as you recommend, who's going to do all the necessary 9-to-5 jobs? The ironic thing is if more people followed this advice, the people working 9-to-5 jobs would actually get paid way better wages. Right now, it's both impossible to get a job, and even if you get a job, modern corporations pay such low dog shit wages that no matter how hard you work, it won't get you anywhere. This is because everyone is being forced to work right now, and it's created a situation where there's not enough jobs available for everyone who needs one. But if more people checked out of society and went their own way, it would be easier for people who do want to work a 9-to-5 to both get a job and negotiate for much better wages, as there would be a lot less competition for labor. And this, I think, perfectly sums up the video as the cherry on top. By refusing to work, you not only achieve more for yourself, you achieve more for society and the people who do want to work as well. It's pretty much a win-win for everyone.